On today's episode of Locked On Canucks, how does the Nazem Kadri signing in Calgary affect my Pacific Division standings? What to expect from Andrei Kuzmenko and Ilya Mikheyev this upcoming season? And is the smart money on the Canucks to make the playoffs? It is Locked On Canucks on a Tuesday, August 23rd, and it starts now.
You're Locked On Canucks, your daily podcast on the Vancouver Canucks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Locked On Canucks, the show that keeps you locked in on all things Vancouver Canucks. I'm, of course, your host, Justin Pooney. I hope you guys are doing well. I want to thank you for making Locked On Canucks your first listen of the day. We are free and, of course, available, wherever you get your podcast services. Of course, you can find me on Twitter at _process sports. You can find our show's Twitter at Locked On Canucks. Please also like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. So, again, we're in the dog days of summer. Weather's beautiful. Hockey's not really on the front burner right now. But, of course, there was a big move at the end of last week that I briefly touched on before we headed to my interview with Locked On Kings last week, which I hope you all enjoyed. As we head to the new season, I hope to get more and do some more Locked On crossovers because I think they are highly receptive and it gives you guys a different perspective and viewpoint. But I believe it was last Thursday, Nazem Kadri signs a 7-year, $49 million deal with the Calgary Flames. Now, the Flames, of course, last year were the Pacific Division winners. And then they lost in the second round in 5 games to the Edmonton Oilers. And then they lost Johnny Gaudreau to the Columbus Blue Jackets. And then Matthew Tkachuk said, I don't want to be here anymore either. I want to go play somewhere else. So they trade him to Florida, where they acquire Mackenzie Weegar and Jonathan Huberdeau, and subsequently signed Jonathan Huberdeau to a massive 8-year deal where he will be making $10.5 million per year. So the Flames, one of the Canucks' biggest rivals just over the Rocky Mountains, have had a very active offseason. Now, you'll remember a couple of weeks ago, I gave you guys my, Pacific Division predictions and what to expect going forward. And I said, it'll be the Canucks, LA, Calgary, all battling for that second and third spot in the Pacific. I had the Canucks finishing 4th in the Pacific Division, but becoming a wild card spot. So, does this Kadri signing change my prediction? How does it affect us in Canuckland? Well, 2 things. We'll start off with the JT Miller aspect of it first. When you look at the Kadri signing, 7 years by $7 million. Now, I'm not saying it's quite evident that JT Miller is a better player. He's also younger than Nazem Kadri. So his value is going to be a little bit higher because he's a better player and he's had a bit more of a pedigree, in my personal opinion. But they are, kind of similar. They both had career years last year, and they're looking to get paid. They're both looking to get paid. Now, Kadri might have priced himself out of his market, given the flat cap, and had to wait longer than he wanted to. Reports were indicating that earlier in free agency, he wanted, the full 9. He wanted a 9-year, $7 million deal, which he didn't get, but he still did very good, catching a desperate Calgary team who signed him to a 7-year, $7 million per season for $49 million. So this could help the Canucks because it could be indication that, hey, the market for JT Miller and his contract extension are not what he expects it to be because of the cap situation in the NHL and how, COVID affected that. But so if the Canucks can get JT Miller for, 5 for 8, 8.5, or 5 for 8, or even 6 for 8 or 7.5, something like that, that could be a very beneficial thing. That's one positive out of this situation that could happen for the Canucks, is it could drop JT Miller's contract value and might, help him wiggle his stance on what he wants. Also, I don't know if it really affects the Pacific Division. I've heard a lot of people coming out and saying that the Flames are a better team than they were last year. I think we should all pump our brakes on that. I don't think Calgary is better than last year. And it's simple as this. Naz Kadri, would you rather have Naz Kadri or Johnny Gaudreau? You'll take Johnny Gaudreau. Would you rather have Jonathan Huberdeau or Matthew Tkachuk, or vice versa? Swap them whichever you want. The two new forwards they brought in are not as good as the two forwards that just left, right? It's as simple as that. The Flames made the Brad Treliving deserves credit for making the best out of a bad situation, but that doesn't mean that Calgary's a better team than they were last year. It's just look at the stats from last year. It's as simple as that. There's no reason to dive into this deeper and overthink it too much. The fact of the matter is this: the Flames are not as good as they were last year. It's as simple as that. I don't expect Huberdeau and Kadri to have the same big seasons they had last year. Just law of averages, it's not going to happen. How are they going to fit under Daryl Sutter's system? Now everybody said, well, Kadri will fit perfectly well in Daryl Sutter's system. Well, think about us and Canucks fans. How many free agent signings have there been that we thought would fit like a glove? Louis Eriksson, we thought would fit like a glove. Verbata, the list goes on. You never know until you get that player in the locker room. Speaking of locker rooms, you saw that video on social media of Mackenzie Weegar getting his Flames sweater. The Flames need a new arena because there are dressing rooms in local like community arenas that are nicer than what the Calgary Flames have. That is horrible. And if you think that doesn't matter, it does. Because that's the reason why the Canucks are upgrading Rogers Arena in their dressing room, which are currently 35 million times better than what the Flames have right now. There's a reason. Players want to be pampered. They want to be treated well. They want to be comfortable at their place of work. And hell, like I said, there's places where I've played beer league that have nicer dressing rooms than what the Calgary Flames have. So, but going back to the Flames of the Pacific Division and for the Canucks, who knows how this experiment is going to work? Yeah, the Flames, if you look on paper, they have a playoff caliber roster, but we don't know how these new pieces are going to fit in Calgary. And for Canucks fans, that should not be nothing to worry about because I believe the Canucks forward group is just as deep as the Flames. Now, Calgary's got a better defense core, but the goaltending matchup is even too. So when I look at this, right, the Canucks still are in the same position. They're going to be competing with the Flames and the Kings for the second and third position in the division. Do I still think Calgary will get that second or third spot? I do, right? But I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that Calgary takes a major step back, right? I don't understand why people are jumping to the conclusion that Calgary is better than last year. Just because Brad Treliving did a good job of getting out of a sticky situation, that doesn't mean the team is necessarily better. He did good. I will give him credit for that. He did good to get, instead of going on a full rebuild, this team has the ability to compete for, the playoffs and potentially a Stanley Cup. I don't think Calgary is, in the upper echelon with the Edmontons, the Colorados, the St. Louis's, the Minnesotas. I just don't think that they're in that echelon. The other thing for Calgary is this, and this is where it will be really happy for Canucks fans. Once the Canucks cap space clears up, which eventually it will, eventually it will over the next season or two, there will be ability to make moves. The Calgary Flames right now, if they do not win a Stanley Cup in the next 2 to 3 seasons, that Huberdeau contract will look horrible. The Kadri contract will look horrible. The Markstrom contract, the Tanev contract, all these other contracts for the mid-30 players are going to look very bad, and this team is going to be crippled. And for Canucks fans like us, people that watch the Canucks, we will be sitting there enjoying the show as the Calgary Flames burst into flames. And just because they're not, if they don't win, this franchise is going to be screwed royally. Nobody's going to want to take that Huberdeau or Kadri contract off your books. So the fact of the matter is this, and this is the last thing I want to say is for the Canucks aspect of it. Don't stress. The Canucks will still have an opportunity to compete with the Flames. The Flames are not world beaters. They're going to take a step back. The law of average just says they are. They're not going to be as good because they lost their two best players and replaced them with good players, but not guys that are as good. So I don't see this situation as positive as other people might think it, but that's just me. And people might think I'm delusional, but I don't care. That's how I feel. So that's that about Calgary and how it affects the Canucks in the Pacific Division. Like I said before, the Canucks will finish third or fourth. I'm thinking fourth and still get a wild card spot. I do think Calgary is a playoff team, but they're not a Stanley Cup contender. They're not better than they were last year. It's as simple as that. So coming up after the break, I'm going to talk about the Canucks' newest Russian acquisitions, Andrei Kuzmenko and Ilya Mikheyev, and what to expect from them next season. But first, we have a important message to give you from NHTSA. You're hanging out with some friends and putting back a few drinks. A few becomes too many. As the evening comes to an end and people start to head out, you think of calling for a ride. Nah, you live nearby. You can make it home okay. It's no big deal. What are the odds you get pulled over? And even so, what's the worst that could happen? Your insurance goes up, you lose your license, you lose your job, you total your car, you kill someone. Everyone knows the risk of driving drunk. The results are tragic and often deadly. However, that doesn't stop everyone from getting behind the wheel while under the influence. That's why police officers are out right now looking for impaired drivers on our roads to save lives. So if you think you're okay to drive after a few drinks, think again, play it safe and plan ahead. Get a ride. It only takes one mistake to change your life or someone else's forever. Drive sober or get pulled over. And welcome back to Locked On Canucks, the show that keeps you locked in on all things Vancouver Canucks. So, yesterday, big pop on Canucks social media. Andrei Kuzmenko, Ilya Mikheyev were out there at 8 rinks in Burnaby. Speaking of places I used to play beer league, 8 rinks in Burnaby. Getting on the ice, and Canucks fans got to see the newest acquisitions rocking the Canucks practice threads. Of course, there was a bunch of fans there. And, the Canucks are in the middle of building a practice arena where these things wouldn't happen. But players are coming back now, starting to percolate. People are back, getting back in town. And we saw some very nice messages from those new players that were, said, hey, to Canucks fans. We also saw Andrei Kuzmenko show off a between-the-legs goal that I was drooling and salivating over. Of course, Kuzmenko was the off-season's most highly coveted European free agent, and he chose Vancouver after he was successfully recruited from GM Patrick Alvin, Bruce Boudreau, and Jim Rutherford. Kuzmenko, of course, is 26, scored 20 goals and 33 assists in 45 games for SKA St. Petersburg of the KHL. Mikheyev, like Kuzmenko, Russian, signed a 4-year deal with the Canucks after spending his first 3 years with the lovely, my favorite team, the Toronto Maple Leafs. In those 146 games, he registered 36 goals and 36 assists. So what do we expect from these two, most in particular? What do I think is going to transpire when Andrei Kuzmenko and Ilya Mikheyev hit the ice in October for the Vancouver Canucks when the games start to count? Well, let's start with Ilya Mikheyev. He is an absolute speed demon out there. He is going to help the Canucks penalty kill vastly. He is going to bolster the top 9 of this team, and he can score goals. He's going to get a chance to play in the top 6, maybe get some power play time along with Kuzmenko. I went in this before in my player profile thing, but I just want to reinforce it. Ilya Mikheyev can score. If he can get 20 goals, that's great. But I think you'll see him get on the forecheck, him play well on the penalty kill, and really play that 200-foot game. So some nights he might not make an impact on the score sheet, but he will make an impact out on the ice. And I think what people need to understand is that's what you need. The Canucks are not a fast team. You need guys with speed that are fast afoot, that can cause disruption, can create chances, turnovers, stuff like that. The NHL is a speed-driven league now. Case in point, the Colorado Avalanche, who just won the Stanley Cup, right? The Canucks were never have not been a fast team for a while. You look at when, they played their best level of hockey in the franchise history, the early, late 2000s, early 2010s. While the Sedins were not the fastest guys, they played fast, but Kessler had wheels, Burroughs had wheels. These guys were able to move the puck quickly. They played the game at a fast pace. So that is where the NHL is now. puck possession, move fast, and that's what Ilya Mikheyev will bring. If he can score 20 goals, great. But I want to see his impact in turning pucks over, creating chances, and on the penalty kill. We move over to Andrei Kuzmenko. All indications of this player are he can put the puck in the back of the net. He's got some vision. He's got some hands, and he also has the ability to play a sandpaper game. So when I look at this, when I look at these two guys, Kuzmenko, we'll focus on right now. But when I look at Kuzmenko, he's going to play in the top six. He's going to get power play time. He's going to have ample opportunity to do something special, to have put up points, to increase on that ECL deal, ELC, sorry, ELC entry level contract. I think Andrei Kuzmenko has all the ingredients to play well. Now it all depends on how Bruce Boudreau deploys him, and I also depends on where he sits in the lineup. But I see him playing on a line with Bo Horvat. If it was me, I'd probably go Mikheyev, Horvat, and Kuzmenko on a second line behind the Lotto line. And then you put on, Dickinson, Podkolzin, and whoever else, right? I think that would be a very good line. It's got speed. They all have some sandpaper, and they're all can play the 200-foot game. I think there's going to be some spells, especially for Andrei Kuzmenko, who's new to the NHL. He's going to go through some time where he's going to be an adjustment, and it's going to be like, what the heck? What's wrong with this guy? But at the end of the season, I think he's going to, maybe score 15 to 20 goals, have 40 to 35 to 40 points, hopefully, or 45 points, whatever. If he can do that, it will be a success because he's on the cheap right now. So I think what we can expect, I don't expect these guys to be world beaters and all-stars right off the shoot, but I expect them to every night play a 200-foot game, play the game the right way, have an impact, and really just be sound hockey players for the Canucks. If they can do that, the investment will be fine. This team will eventually have success, and they will be where I expect them to be in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And speaking of playoffs, if you guys recall in our earlier episodes, I was very big on giving you lines and stuff like that and predictions betting-wise for the Canucks season, or so the Canucks games, and I did very well for those of you early listeners. So right now, after this last break, I'm going to break down the Canucks season future odds and kind of tell you if those are surefire bets as at this point to lock them in and get good value or stay away. So stick around for that if you want to win some money. And welcome back to the Locked On Canucks podcast. I'm, of course, your host, Justin Pooney. Hope you guys are all doing well. Final segment, we are back with a little bit of betting. As you know, betting has taken over the world in the sports, and I think that's a great indication on statistics and trends and how to gauge where your team is at. So we're going to go through a little fun segment where I'm going to go through certain Canucks future bets and tell you if those are good value to lock in. Well, we'll start off with the big granddaddy of them all, the Stanley Cup. The Canucks are plus 5,000 in the same realm as the Ottawa Senators. The Nashville Predators, Dallas Stars are plus 4,500. The Detroit Red Wings are plus 5,500. So the Canucks are long shots. I wouldn't put money on that. I don't think the Canucks are going to win the Stanley Cup. This year, I think, barring a miracle and something crazy going on, the divine intervention or something, the Canucks are not winning the Stanley Cup. So I would stay away from that bet. Team points. To record 100-plus points in the season, the Canucks are plus 210. Around the same as the Dallas Stars, the Washington Capitals, and the Nashville Predators. You look at it, the Canucks want to be a playoff team. They're going to need to improve on the 90 points, 92 points, or whatever they had last year. They're going to need to get law of averages says they're going to have to get around 96 to 98 points just to squeak into a final playoff spot. So you're going to have to be hovering around that 100-point bar. Do I think this Canucks team is 3 or 4 wins better than they were last year? Well, I think that team was on pace to get 100 points anyway, and you've added to this team to make it better. So do I think the Canucks will get 100 points? I would take it plus 210. That's decent odds. A $10 bet on that would win you guys, I think it's $20, $21, right? So I think that's a decent deal. I think this Canucks team is 3 to 4 wins better than it was last year. I think that team was on pace to score on a 100-point pace, and they're better. So I think this Canucks team has the chance, and it's a decent bet for them to win enough games to get 100 points or be in enough one-goal shootout games where they can, reach the 100-point mark. Confidence winner bet. The Canucks currently are plus 2,300 to win the Western Conference. Like I said, I don't see that happening. There's too many good teams in the West. Surprisingly, Calgary's got the second best odds with Edmonton. And Vegas. Colorado is the proverbial favorite, but I find that very interesting that Calgary and Edmonton are up there. I think Edmonton, again, is a really good chance to do it, but Calgary, it's just the hype of this whole Nazem Kadri deal and stuff like that. I'm not really too hyped up on that. Division winners. The Canucks are currently plus 1,000 to win the Pacific Division. As I said, I don't think the Canucks are this year are good enough to make make that leap to be win the Pacific Division. This one's interesting. To have the worst record in the NHL this season, the Canucks are plus 7,000 to have the worst record. Do not take that bet. The Canucks will not have the worst record in the NHL. I think that belongs to either Arizona, Chicago, or Montreal. Finally, the most important bet to make the playoffs. The Canucks are minus 134. Take that bet. Put your money on it because the Vancouver Canucks will be making the playoffs this year. You can book it. The drought ends. The Canucks will make the playoffs as they are currently constituted. That is all the time we have today for Locked On Canucks. Lock in those bets. Win some money. Or if not, just listen to me and hopefully I win some money and pray for me. But I want to thank you for making Locked On Canucks your first listen every day. Tomorrow, we will dive more into the Canucks and see what's going on in Canuck land. Now, your second listen, Locked On NHL. Locked On Experts, give you a daily 30-minute podcast on all things NHL all year long. Stay up to date on everything in the hockey world. Locked On NHL, your daily 30-minute NHL podcast. Take care, guys. Stay safe. I'll talk to you tomorrow.